So let's get serious. The mental health minute. And I've had to do this a lot lately. You can use this in your personal life. We use this a lot. We just talked about it, actually. We use this a lot in aviation in general. Compartmentalization. And what does compartmentalization means? It means forgetting about all the stuff that's not related to the task at hand. It's really a very Zen-like thing because you're living in the moment. You're focused on what you're doing right now and not what happened on the ground or what happened, earlier in the flight that you messed up. You're focused on what is my current task. Where that can be a problem, though, is if you compartmentalize your entire life, and eventually that stuff will bubble up. So there's a balance between healthy compartmentalization, where you are using it to focus and be in the present, in the now. And then there's the unhealthy, where you're just never dealing with your problems. And I will tell a perfect example of that in my life, where I did not compartmentalize because I had been compartmentalizing so much that I wasn't dealing with stuff, and it bubbled up in the jet. And I talked about this, the T-38 thing, where I suddenly felt this, like, I don't want to go flying right now. My dogs are going to die. There's all this other stuff going on. And I went flying anyway. And I just got this sense of dread, like I don't want to be here. And to your previous point that we were just talking about, the moment you stop believing you're the best pilot in the air is the moment you feel your own mortality, and the moment you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And that is a scary thing to go to, but it is very difficult to get back from. I mean, it took me, a year of working to get back from that place. And it was compartmentalization. One of the tools you work through is living in the moment, being present in the now and working on what is my next task versus what's going on extraneously. What do you guys got?
Yeah, man. I mean, compartmentalization at least in the flying business, is huge. I mean, Wombat will tell you, like, you go to work, you got all kinds of personal stuff going on, and then, your butt hits the seat, and it's almost like a switch goes off in your head, and you're just like, okay, now I'm starting the airplane. Okay, now I'm getting my clearance. Okay, now I'm checking everybody in. Like, and that's a result of
what's next,
of a lot of training, and then, but you talk about unpacking it, but in aviation, when you get back, you unpack it all in a debrief, right? So
correct.
So I mean, you could take that even to your personal life, right? So compartmentalization can help you get through some tough times, but at some point you're going to have to deal with it.
One of the things, if you take an FAA check ride or a military check ride, one of the first things they tell you is don't grade yourself, and do not get hung up on what mistakes you've made, because you've got to go, I screwed that up, noted for the debrief, because it'll snowball. And I've done AIB reports, and we've gone with fatalities where, unfortunately, the bag of experience ran out because you didn't have that experience to fall back on. And we weren't compartmentalizing, and we're just like, man, that sucked. I'm going to hook this ride. Oh God. And next thing you know, it's a mishap versus we could have just debriefed this and been done with it. Sorry, Wombat, go ahead.
No, and I agree. And I think everything you've said is 100% true. And I don't think that it is any different whether you fly airplanes or not. I think this applies to everyday life. And I see it, and I've recognized it in aviation, and now I can apply it to everything from getting up and feeling overwhelmed with what I have to do that day, or getting to work and what I have to do at work, or being, here as a husband and a father and all that. And it adds up, and it constantly adds up, and I fall back. And there's a story that I tell that is the ultimate, and it's a little bit lighthearted, but it's a true story that happened to me in T-45s, where I was in the back of a BFM for the student, and we got a ECS failure, so we lost our pressurization, but the student thought that we had a compressor stall, so he shut the motor off, which is not ideal in a single engine aircraft. And it relit because it was perfectly fine when he turned it off, so it wasn't a problem. And we knocked off the fight, and we flew back, and I could tell from the back that he was in his own head. And, this was one of those moments, and, I'd love to talk to this guy again years later, but, I told him, I go, look, let me tell you, and I use this, kind of goes to what we were talking about previously about different airframes and different services. As I go, do you want to know the difference? I came up on ICS. I go, do you want to know the difference between an Air Force pilot and a Navy pilot? And he goes, yes, sir. And I go, an Air Force pilot forgets his peanut butter and jelly sandwich for his flight, and he's so locked onto that he lands gear up. I go, a Navy pilot shuts down his only working motor, but he's expected to go back and fly a perfect landing and be on the ship the first time, period, case closed. And the kid kind of chuckled. And I go, and the last time I checked, you're not trying to get your wings of silver. So show me you can compartmentalize what you just did and get this plane back to base. And he did great. And when we land, he looked at me and he goes, I know you got to do a pink sheet and I'll be in the ready room. And I go, there's nothing that me failing on you on this flight is going to teach you more than you already learned. And I didn't fail him. And that same thing applies. The Air Force part was obviously a joke. That same thing, though, applies where I've seen friends get themselves into that where they can't compartmentalize. And it doesn't have to just be aviation. It can be life. It could be marriage. It could be kids. It could be your job. And we get so wrapped into this on our daily life that it's like you have to be able to go, you know what can I control right now, in the moment, right now? If it's not on that list, I don't care about it right now. I'll get to it. I'm not forgetting it. I'm not pushing it into a box and never touching it again. But right now, in this moment, can't deal with it. Period, case closed. I have to deal with the things that are going to get me moving forward through this moment. And then I can go back and readdress.
I'm going to say, well, that as an LSO, like part of your job is making sure dudes girls, whatever, were able to compartmentalize and focus. Like you said, 100%. Man, right? Because the ship thing is kind of hard, but yeah. I've had them talk to me before to help me get,
angels in
the game, get back in the game, right?
It's all right, 100%. Cougar. I'll keep you right on my wing. Take you right in, buddy.
And it's different for everybody.
Yankee, so
it's different for everybody. I got in trouble as an LSO in Meridian because I had a Marine who did fantastic at the field, which is the ones we would always worry about, right? Because if they're doing really good at the field, you're like, what's going to happen when you go see the real monster out there? And his first couple passes, perfect. And then he got in his own head. And this is where it's important to see and know your friends, your coworkers and all this, and see these tendencies in them. And I knew for this Marine, he was a Marine at heart, period, case closed. I mean, K-bar in the teeth, that was what he wanted to be. And I came up over tower frequency while he was getting gas. And I said, basically over the frequency, I was like, hey, Marine. And he's like, yes, sir. I'm like, pull your head out of your butt and fly like you know you can fly, period. Literally, the phone rings. I mean, picture initial carrier call, and your LSO says that. The phone rings, and it's the captain of the ship, and he goes, if that guy flies into the back of my ship, I'm ripping your wings off your chest. And I go, he won't. And he didn't. He flew great. Because you have to know that. And that's part of being an instructor. That's part of being an LSO. But that's in life, too, where we can't be so focused around what's going on here to not see our friends and our counterparts around us. Everybody's going through something, and you might be the one that helps somebody else compartmentalize without even realizing it or with realizing it.
And to that point, Wombat, if it does become too much, don't do it.
Correct.
There's the other part to that too, both as yourself or your friends in the squadron or whatever. If you see somebody going through something, if you are going through something, don't add to your problems by going and taking a jet airborne that you might have just been better off saying, today's just not the day. Let me deal with whatever it is that I cannot compartmentalize. And that's what I did. When all that stuff happened with the T-38, I said, look, I'm off. Give me a week. Let me deal with this. And I first person I called, you and Gonki. We talked about this. I lived it. And dude, there is nothing worse than when your own mind turns on you because it's your strongest weapon. It is your strongest weapon. And when it is the thing that is keeping you from doing the thing you love, you hate every minute of it. And the only thing that saves you is friends and yourself going, I'm not going to make this worse by putting myself in a dangerous situation. I'm going to raise a paw and go, Uncle, let's step back and deal with it so that I'm not overwhelming myself with stuff. Because there's a limit to how much you can compartmentalize. Once you reach that limit, now you're inside your own head.
I agree. And you can't see it anymore. And one of the things I remember telling you, because you had said, and I don't want to get too personal on this, but you had said, well, this is what I do. This is who I am. And I told you, I go, Mover, look at all the great things you've done just with this channel. Like, you are not defined by that jet. That jet does not define who you are. It might have been what got people interested initially, but it's not who the real Mover is. But when you're in that moment, and we've all been there, it manifests itself different ways. But when you're in that moment, you can't see that. It does not matter. And you couldn't see that when I said it, but eventually you did. And that's just the way it is. And that's why looking out for the people around you, whether it's family, friends, your brothers and sisters, the camaraderie, people you don't even know. I mean, there's been times where things I've said, people are like, man, that really spoke to me. And I'm like, I wasn't literally even speaking to you. You know what I mean? But I'm glad it did, because there's too much stuff going on in this world right now. And it's so easy to feel alone. It's the most bizarre time I've ever lived, where we're connected to everybody, but we're alone. It's bizarre. And we put so much pressure on ourselves for things that frankly we can't control anyway.
Adamantium Blade, thank you. Mover, how much time are you spending as a reserve peace officer? What are your healthy stress coping strategies? Lately it's been anywhere between 40 and 70 hours a month. This month's a light month. I think I'm right at 40 hours. But it is exactly what Wombat just said. One of the reasons I love doing it so much, and I have done as many hours as I have, is because I picked a shift with a group of guys and girls that I love. They are my brothers, sisters. I know they got my back. I know that if something happens, they'll be there. I know that if something happens to me, somebody's going to come take care of Luna. I know that band of brothers and sister is there for me. And when things start going sideways and I have trouble coping with something, it's the talking it out with the people that have that common interest and that common, they lived it too. So it's always easier to cope with stuff when you're doing this in a group than it is to do this by yourself. And that's, to me, no matter what you're doing, that's why the Squadron Brotherhood is such an important thing. That's why the Ready Room camaraderie is such an important thing, is because when you have these shared experiences and you can then connect, and not just while you're doing it, but after the fact, when you can connect and say, hey, man, that was messed up, and then throw in the dark humor, throw in all the other stuff, that comes with the profession, the cop humor, the firefighter humor, people ask about the rivalry. Well, there's one with cops and firefighters too, but guess what? We go on scene together. We're brothers again. No cop is going to let a firefighter suffer, just like no firefighter is going to let a cop suffer. It's just, we make fun of each other because that's just part of it. But at the end of the day, we have each other's backs. And, I make fun of Wizzos, and I have in the past, but I respect and appreciate. Listen, we're all we do that because it's fun and it's funny. And by the way, everybody says, where'd you get arm the seat? You're the last flare. And that's from Gonky. So he needs to take credit for that one. But
true.
My point is, we are all in this together. And if you can lean on each other, that's how you cope. That's what it boils down to. Because once you feel like you're alone on that island, which I did for a long time, with
everybody
what happened last year.
That's the breaking news. Is everybody's felt that way. Gonky, I know damn well you felt that way, even though you don't necessarily want to talk about it and you shouldn't. We've all felt that way. Anybody who hasn't felt that way is fooling themselves. That is life. That is life. And it's the fact that we live in this society where we have to hide that. And we have to hide that vulnerability. We're all so afraid. I remember you talking me off the ledge before the first book came out, where you're like, you got to put it out there. And I'm like, what if people don't like it? Well, guess what? Some people don't. A lot actually don't. But the second one's better.
Both books. So, but there was ledge talking on both books, sir.
But it is what it is, and you have to trust in that process. And I don't know where our society turned into this, where we all think that we have to have everything figured out. Because even the people, actually I do. Twitter. I blame it on social media. I truly do blame it on social media because
100%.
Because the the things that you see on social media, and it's all fake. It's all
TV too,
BS.
right?
There's so
Reality
few
shows.
people. Yes, there are so few people that are honest on social media that show you how it truly is. And that's why I think something like your show stands out, Mover, because you've done that. You've shown the vulnerabilities. You've shown the cockiness. You've shown all of it, right? And you've shown you. And we sit here and we look at these people on social media, and it's like, well, how did he get the six pack? And like, why is he driving a Shelby? And how is he a two-book off? Wait, no, that's just my account. I'm sorry, I got confused there. But like, you see his stuff, and it's all BS, man. It's BS. Like, I posted a funny thing the other day. I took a screenshot of my phone when my alarm went off for work. I don't know if you guys saw this. It was 3:15 in the morning. I took a screenshot, and I was like, never down, never out. And this was all a test, right? And people were writing me. I was getting multiple messages of like, dude, you're better than Jocko. And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's what time I have to get up to go to work. Like, that's my job. I don't have a choice because they will fire me. It's not motivational. And I told them this. I'm like, don't buy into this crap. And I'm not saying Jocko's crap. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm saying, Wombat's going to have the people's elbow.
But my point that I'm getting at is try to look through all that fluff. There are people on social media that have a lot of good to give. And we miss that because we're so focused on either what we think they have or what we want to have if we had their opportunities. It's like, dude, everybody has opportunities and nobody has opportunities. Just go for what you can go for and see where the chips fall. That's it.
Yeah.
I think that something that you guys touched on, maybe folks didn't realize it because it was so organic, is that can be taught and that can be trained. And if you don't know how to compartmentalize, look into getting trained and getting taught, because it can be really valuable. And then the flip side, Mover, you and I have talked about this, and you guys all mentioned the same. Don't overdo it. Resilience can be its own worst enemy. So know when to say when.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing that. We'll talk about resilience as its own episode, but thanks, Doug. That's good stuff.
I'll Google what that means.